Elizabeth Longhorn is getting bullied. And the funny thing is, yeah, she's 52 years old and she has never been bullied before. She has never been a target or anything of that sort. Not even when she was in middle school or high school as a teenager, nor when she worked in a highly competitive field, neither when she got married. Because at one point, she was thinking to herself, oh my God, my husband's family, are they going to like me because they're white and she's black? Turns out it was her family that actually had a hard time accepting a spouse. But that's not the point. The point is, all these decades have gone by. She has never once been a target. She has never once found herself in something like this until now. The most funny thing about this whole situation, yeah, is that she doesn't even know why she's been bullied. She doesn't even know who is responsible. Because sometimes you can actually say, yeah, that's the person that's responsible for all of this. This is the girl that is tormenting me. This is the person that is making my life a living hell. But not in this case. It's online. She's just I gotta tell you guys the story. Let's start from the beginning. The story begins with Elizabeth being led out of the Greenwich Hotel by her husband Bernie. Whilst they waited for the valet to bring the car around front, Elizabeth just looked around the surroundings, trying to remember every single piece of memory that they have made in this part of New York City. Her husband Bernie, he did nothing. He just stood there, his short, silvery hair blowing in the wind. She adored that about him. Elizabeth adored that about her husband. His poised focus, how he would mindfully perform one task before moving on to the other. She knew that as he stood there on the cobblestone pavement, he was just there. He wasn't thinking about anything else. He was just standing there holding her hand firmly. Sometimes Elizabeth wondered why her husband is like that. And she would often conclude that it has to be the lawyer in him. That's why he's like that. But then again, he has always been that way since they met 32 years ago. But then again, when they met, he was already studying law, so that kind of checks out. Elizabeth knew that when they get into the car, her husband Bernie would put on some Don Williams, concentrate on driving, and occasionally speak to her. Although he would always listen, that's for sure. And he spoke to her in other ways, but he rarely initiated a conversation. And Elizabeth used to be bothered about this, so much so that she actually broke up with him some 30 odd years ago. And he had shown up on her dorm room, knocking fervently, fully drenched because it rained that night, and he told her that he would come back the next day and hoped that she changed her mind. Back then, his hair was fiercely brunette and it had crazy waves in them. His quiet arrogance piqued her interest, and of course, they resumed dating. Ever since that time, Elizabeth decided not to let that bother her. But she could not reconcile these two facts in her head because her husband, he is a successful lawyer. But how could he be so successful but still be a man of few words? Because lawyers talk, right? They are known for their detail oriented, argumentative, yada, yada, yada. But look at him. Look at Bernie. So one day, she actually snuck into the courtroom. Her husband had a case going on that day. And let me tell you guys something. His fierceness, his methodical speeches, everything she saw about her husband that day made her question if she even really knew Bernie. Anyway, she went home and she never spoke to her husband about that. When their car finally came around, Bernie held the door open for Elizabeth to go in. Elizabeth has never opened her own car door. Ever since she met Bernie, she has never opened her own car door. Like, he always did that for her. He loves her highly. He knew it. She knew it. Their friends knew it. Their families knew it. Their son knew it. You would know it too if you were to spend just 2 minutes with them. They got into the car and they started driving back down to Chicago. Elizabeth had hoped that they would at least get to spend a week or two in New York City. But when she had walked into her husband's home office and he was scribbling in his thick leather notebook, for he loves to write out the itinerary, she saw that he had only penned down 2 days, no flight. She was stunned and she asked him why as she sat on his huge mahogany desk. There was only one chair in the office, each chair of the same mahogany wood with fine and carved intricate detailings. So whenever Elizabeth was in the office, she would oftentimes have to sit on the desk and he would join her most times, and they would spend the next several minutes panting, moaning, sweating, and Elizabeth suspects that they probably made their son on that desk. So she asked him why 2 days, and Bernie explained to her that they would simply drive to New York City and drop off their son Max and then make it back home. Elizabeth said no. Oh, no, 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 no. They weren't simply going to drop Max off. They were going to help him move in. They weren't just going to drive there, drop him, and then turn around. No, they were going to be there for him. So Bernie said, okay, no problem. He rewrote, depart Chicago 5 a.m. on a Friday morning. They would make it to New York City by nightfall, and then they would check into the Greenwich Hotel. The next day, being Saturday, they would spend it by helping Max move in. And Sunday, they would make the drive back down home to Lincoln Park. Elizabeth said, okay, all right, fine. At least that's better. But she asked him why. Why were they in such a hurry to come back? It wasn't like she had a job that she needed to be back home in time for. The job's gone. Spoiler alert, the bully took the job. So she doesn't get it. Why were they in such a hurry? They loved New York City. They met there. She thought that they would at least want to spend some time there, given the fact that they haven't been there in a while. They would want to meet up with some old friends and just do whatever they do. So why were they in such a hurry? By this time, she had gotten up from the decks and she was now sitting on Bernie's thighs. Bernie proceeded to hold her almost in a hug, and he explained to her that they actually had a trip that they needed to be back home for, to prepare for. What trip? Elizabeth asked. She knew that Bernie had booked a 3-month cruise, but that was still 3 weeks away. They did not need to come back so quickly just to prepare for a trip that's still at least 3 weeks away. Bernie told her that, oh no, there's a trip before that trip. She had no idea about this intermediate trip. Okay, she said, fine, no problem. But it wasn't surprising that she had no idea about this trip, because that's the way it has been. The amount of times that Elizabeth knew what Bernie was planning or what was going on in their marriage was just way less compared to the amount of times that she did not know. Bernie was full of surprises. All she had to do was just show up. Bernie was always planning something and doing something, and all she had to do was just like, oh, you did that? As she left the office, she asked Bernie why they were staying at the Greenwich Hotel, because they've only ever stayed at the Four Seasons. Even when they were in their early 20s and they were broke and their parents were basically bankrolling their lifestyle, Bernie only ever made her stay at the Four Seasons. That's kind of like their hotel. So why the Greenwich Hotel? Why now? Bernie shrugged his shoulders and said nothing. But she knew. She knew. It was because of their son, Max. He did not want their son, Max, tainting one more thing or place he enjoys with his wife. Or rather, he enjoyed with his wife. Elizabeth knew that Bernie wasn't particularly close to their son, but she had always tried to ignore it. But it shows. It shows in Bernie never speaking to the son. Yes, we know he's not a man of many words. We all know that by now. But he loves to always be around Elizabeth. But to be around their son, Max, you dialed the wrong number. You see, they never wanted kids. Max wasn't part of the plan. Elizabeth remembered how she cried when she found out that she was pregnant. She had just returned home from Lebanon after covering the conflict there because she's a war photojournalist. And she came back and she was having severe stomach cramps. Fearing the worst had happened, she went in to get it checked out, only to be told she was pregnant. How could this have happened? She was on the pill. Bernie always wore a cover. How could this have happened? She remembered having to tell Bernie. They had just moved into the brownstone mansion and they had a little bit of ongoing live-in remodeling. So their foyer was completely covered in dust. Elizabeth remembered that there was a coat hanger that they had since gotten rid of, and Bernie was putting on his shoes. So he was bent over when she just told him. She just blotted it out. She's pregnant. When Bernie got back up on his feet, he was straightened up. He told her that they would discuss it when he gets back home from work that evening. That evening, no discussion was had. The next evening, nothing was said. The following evenings, nothing. So the pregnancy sort of decided for itself. It was here to stay. Bernie was present through it all. He was there. He was. For Liz, he would do anything. But that was it. Nothing else. Max would oftentimes cry to Elizabeth, sobbing violently, asking her why his father hates him. And Elizabeth would try to console him and tell him that his father doesn't hate him, but he's not dumb. Max is not a dumb kid. He can see clearly what is happening. He can see it all. Elizabeth would sometimes think about divorcing Bernie when Max was crying to her. But what would that have done? Should she have divorced Bernie and then go look for another man who was supposedly going to be a better father to Max when it was Bernie's love that Max really wanted? So, in time, Max learns to make do with his mother's affection because everybody knew it by now. Bernie's affection, Bernie's emotions were for Liz and Liz alone. Bernie had shared everything he had with his wife, with their son, Max. The Four Seasons weren't going to be a part of it. They were now in Pennsylvania. Don Williams, the letter, was playing with Bernie singing along. Lonely days are gone, I'm going home. My baby, he just wrote me a letter. Elizabeth told Bernie that she was going to be taking a short nap. They used to do this all the time. Travel, travel, travel. Travel interstate, drive for many hours, travel to several countries. Ugh. Bernie wanted to see the world with Liz, and they did. They did travel. The thick photo album above the fireplace was a testament to all the travels they've done. Things changed a bit when Elizabeth got pregnant with Max. Bernie got a vasectomy immediately after that incident. They resumed traveling when Max was a bit grown, but Elizabeth started to feel guilty about leaving Max with his grannies whenever they went on one of their trips, so she started to bring him along. Bernie said nothing. It was okay. He was fine with it. The truth is that Bernie wasn't a horrible father. One cannot necessarily say Bernie was an absolutely terrible father because he was there. He showed up to every game. He took care of Max. He did his homework. He was there for him, but there just wasn't any emotional connection. But overall, there wasn't any issue with their little family. The real issue actually started a few months ago when Elizabeth posted a photo of Max to her Instagram because Max had graduated high school and she was celebrating him. She got a few comments from family and friends, all also congratulating Max, but one comment stood out. It was weird, but she thought nothing of it. Every single photo she posted after that was met with an onslaught of hateful, vicious comments. It did not matter what kind of photo she posted. It could be a photo of the sky, of a plant, anything at all. Vicious, hateful. She started to receive multiple DMs from various accounts and they were getting vicious by the day. Soon enough, it was a full-on attack. The person spoke like he knew her, like he knew her family. What was this hate at 52, Elizabeth thought to herself. Some kid, some teenager, some unemployed bum somewhere just typing away on his phone or on his computer, just targeting people online and bullying them. But Elizabeth thought nothing of it because it wasn't necessarily affecting her in her daily life. All she had to do was exit Instagram and she would forget about it until she was fired from her job. She was almost retired anyway, but heck, fired? Oh. And over some anonymous email that was so incriminating, an email that she never saw. She never got to see this mail. She had no idea what the email contained. So she knew it had to be this true. She knew. Elizabeth knew that she wasn't let go of solely because of this mail. Let's face it, she's old. She knew it. Bernie wanted her to fight, take them to court. He wanted her to do this and do that, but she did not want to do that. She's tired. Besides, she got a 9 severance package and she did not have the strength to fight. However, last night, she found the strength to fight. After posting a photo of Max to her Instagram, congratulating him on getting into New York University. Part of the reason, the major reason actually, that Elizabeth made sure that they did not just drop Max off at campus and they made sure to help him move in was because she knew that the only reason Max wanted to go to NYU was because of his dad. They both went to NYU, but Max was going there solely because of his dad. This was kind of like his last ditch attempt at trying to connect with his father. Elizabeth knew that, so she made sure that Bernie would be there for Max. After she posted the photo congratulating Max, the troll surfaced. This time, wishing Max dirt. Listen, it's one thing to bully her. It's one thing to get her fired from her job. But to wish Max dirt. Oh no, you should not have done that. Here's the thing, Max may have been unwanted, unplanned at first, but she loves Max dearly. And she would do anything to protect Max. So she turned to her husband, Bernie, who was at that time laying on their hotel room bed. And she told him it was time to hire a private investigator. Because when all of this initially started, Bernie wanted them to actually just hire a private investigator to get down to the root of it. And Elizabeth said no because she thought it was going to be a Passover thing, the person was going to get tired and move on to another person. That did not happen. But now that this case was critical, yeah, they should. So they hired a private investigator. Bernie literally has someone on speed dial, and the person was like, oh, yeah, don't worry, I'm on it. When Liz woke up from a nap, they were now in Ohio. Her phone rang. It was a PI. Elizabeth answered and she placed the call on speakerphone so her husband Bernie, who was driving, could also listen in. The PI said that he had answers. He knows who the person is, where the person is. And Elizabeth was like, okay, all right, tell us. He told her that the silly grammar mistakes, because some of the messages that Elizabeth received, they weren't the best written thing out there. So he told her it's not because the person is uneducated. It's most likely because English is not the person's first language and the person is actually really educated. Okay. Who is this person? He also mentioned that the person is not young as Elizabeth suspected. It's actually an old man. An old man? Just tell me who the person is, Elizabeth said. Well, it's a judge in Spain. A judge in Spain? Elizabeth asked. What does Spain have to do with me? I've never even been to Spain. Argentina, Brazil, Portugal, Costa Rica, Puerto Rico. I've been to a lot of countries, but we've never been to Spain. We've just never been there. What does a judge in Spain have to do with me? Why is a prominent person targeting me? Elizabeth went on and on and on, asking questions. Then she stopped. She turned to Bernie and she said, I only see one connection here, Bernie. He's a judge. You're a lawyer. I've never been to Spain, but you have, before we even met. Does this have to do with you, Bernie, and not me? Bernie asked the PI for the name of the person. When the name was mentioned, Bernie simply said, yes, Elizabeth. It has to do with me. That's the end of the story, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you liked it. If you want a part 2, let me know, because I'm thinking a part 2 is needed, and I have a rough draft of part 2, but 3/4 part of me is like, nah, I should leave it as is. But what do you want? Anyway, I'm gonna go now. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in another video. Bye.